Hey guys, Shane here with Genesis Offroad. Welcome back to the podcast where we're going to be answering your questions about our dual battery systems and all of our other products to help you guys get the most out of your Genesis Offroad products so you can get out there and enjoy your vehicle, enjoy your time with your family and your friends. So we want to take the questions that we get from our YouTube channel, from our chat on our website, from our emails, and give you guys a deeper answer than what we can just type out for you. Because we feel like there's still a lot of common questions. There's still a lot of misunderstandings about dual battery kits, about electronics in the vehicles, about how all this stuff works and how to use it. So with me today, I've got Mr. Brad Chester, our marketing guy. Brad is going to bring us the Q's and I'll give you the A's. So Brad, why don't you tell the folks how they can get their questions answered on our show?
First of all, comment down below. That's the easiest way. I watch those comments on every video that we have, and so I'm constantly monitoring that. So that's a good way. Also emailing us info@genesisoffroad.com or giving us a phone call. Mike can pass that question along to us.
Yeah, good. All right. So yeah, if you got your questions, please send them to us. We'd be glad to answer them for you here on the podcast. Okay, so Brad, you ready to just jump right in here?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, what you got for me today?
All right, the first question. So on our Gen 3 system, we have a boost button, right?
Boost button.
The question is, why would I need to switch the boost button from auto mode?
Okay, why do I want to switch off of auto mode to either on or off?
Correct.
So most of the time, you're going to leave that switch in the center position in auto. Automatic means the Gen 3 system will handle connecting and separating the batteries based on the voltage levels, okay? So real quickly, the way that system works is when it sees your engine start, it's gonna let your alternator charge your cranking battery for a short time, just to top it back off. Then it'll link the batteries together in parallel automatically so that they both can be charged while you're driving. Then when you get to your destination, you turn the engine off. The batteries are still connected, but only until they drop down to about 12.7 volts. And then they're going to separate, leave that cranking battery for starting the engine later, and all of your accessories run off the second battery. Okay. Now, why would you want to change it from the automatic mode? Let's say for some reason your cranking battery has gotten drained down and too low and you can't start the engine, right? That can happen because all of your factory circuits always run from the cranking battery. Your factory fuse box is hardwired directly to the cranking battery's positive post. So that means your headlights, your radio, your 12-volt sockets inside, anything that you've got wired up directly to the cranking battery is always going to run from the cranking battery. So it is possible for that battery to get drained down too low and you can't start the engine. In that situation, you flip the button to the on position. That will link the batteries together. It's just like using jumper cables. So you got a dead cranking battery and you hook up jumper cables to a second battery that's sitting there. You're going to use the power from the second battery to help start the engine. Now, does that always work? Maybe not. What if you've got a dead cranking battery and you've got a dead accessory battery? Well, now you just got two dead batteries. You're just having a bad day, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you're not going to jump start a dead battery off a dead battery, right? So a good way to tell if you can do that or not is watching the G screen. If you look at your G screen, it says main battery is at 11.2 or something low like that, and your aux battery is still at 12.5, 12.7, something like that. You're like, oh sweet, hit that in the boost mode. You can do it from the G screen inside, or you can do it from the switch under the hood and jump start the vehicle. Now the off position, we've had a few people over the years ask us to be able to manually separate the batteries. And there's a few different scenarios where you want to do that. One example that I like to use, we had a customer years ago that had a situation where he was out in the wilderness and drained down both of his batteries and just had two dead batteries and couldn't start the engine the next morning. So he's way out in the mountains, had two dead batteries for whatever the reason was, and couldn't start the engine. So what do? He was hiking or trying to call somebody for some help, trying to find some jumper cables out there. So this guy said, I don't want that to ever happen again. I want to manually separate the batteries when I get to my campsite. And on our earlier versions of our system, you couldn't do that. You didn't have a way to manually separate the batteries. So in the Gen 3 system, we added that feature. so that if you want to, you can manually separate the batteries so that you know none of your aftermarket accessories that are wired up to the bus bars will be draining your cranking battery. So he did not want to touch that cranking battery at all.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good scenario. And it's not that our system isn't going to automatically detect and separate those batteries after the voltage drops a little bit, but it is a safety feature that if you're like, I 100% with confidence want to know and be able to separate those batteries, that's what that off switch is for.
Yeah, that's right. Another good case for using the off position is if you want to charge one battery at a time. If you leave it in the auto position, if you hook up a charger to one battery, the charge will go into that battery, raise its voltage up above 13.1, and the system will link the batteries together. Now the charger will be charging both batteries. Okay, the charger can go either direction. You can hook it to the main battery and it'll go over to the accessory, or you can hook the charger to your accessory battery and it links together and it goes the other way. Okay, so it goes both ways. So if you want to get a good full charge on one battery only, you can hook your charger to the one battery, flip it to the off position, and the charger is only going to charge that one battery. Just remember, once you're done, go ahead and flip it back to that auto position, because when it's in off mode, the alternator, when you're driving, will not be charging that second battery. Okay, so just want to make sure you flip it back to auto when you're done.
You know, I had a buddy of mine, he left his auxiliary lights on that were hooked up to his secondary battery. That auxiliary battery died. You don't have to boost mode that auxiliary battery, because once you turn the car on, it's going to automatically link those and start charging both batteries.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. If your cranking battery is still full, the whole point of our system is we want to make sure you can always start the engine. Okay, that's number one. So if you're able to start the engine, just let our system link the batteries together to start charging up that auxiliary battery. You don't need to flip it to the on position while you're driving in order to charge the second battery.
Gotcha. Cool. Good clarification. All right. Well, you mentioned something in that'll lead us to the next question. This person asked, can I hook up my stock auxiliary switches to our system?
Yeah. So the factory aux switches on the dash of the JL.
Right.
Yeah. So that's going to be a perfect example of those factory circuits. Those switches get their power through the fuse box, which is connected to the cranking battery. Okay. So as far as I'm aware, I'm not aware of any way to, locate and pull those wires out of the fuse box and reroute them over to the auxiliary bus bars. Okay. That would probably be a nightmare to try to pull those wires out of the fuse box. So it's just not worth it. So what I tell folks, on the JL, you can configure those factory aux switches on the dash. You can configure them to be on all the time, or just ignition hot only. So they only come on when the ignition is on. So what I do, I've got the Rebel Offroad Halo rack, and I've got KC lights on the top of my JL, and I've got those wired up to aux 1 on the dash. But I only use those lights when I'm driving. So I don't plan on running those big, even though they're LED lights, they still draw a lot of power because they're super bright. So I don't plan on running those lights with the engine off. So I use those switches only for things that I'm going to use while the engine's running. Now, if you want to have switches for stuff, to control stuff when the engine is off, I'd recommend putting in an auxiliary fuse box like an S-Pod or a Switch Pros or something like that. That fuse box can be wired up to the bus bars. That way, anything you control from that, your touch screen or your little switch panel will run from your second battery and won't drain the crank battery.
All right, that's good. I like that. This person asked, what's the difference between our Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3 systems?
Good question. So I've been meaning to put kind of like a little timeline or a little feature comparison chart on the website. We should do that.
Yeah.
At least some pictures, because I know there's a little bit of confusion around that. So the Gen 1 kit we launched back in 2013 with the JK. We launched that kit at Jeep Beach just for the JKs. And that kit has the Cole Hersey smart isolator device. It's a little silver solenoid with a little control box on the back of it. And that gets wired into both of the batteries and, of course, our bus bars. So that's the one with the silver solenoid in the center of the lid.
And that was the first dual battery system we came out with.
That's right.
Why, obviously, it's named Gen 1.
That's right. So the Gen 1 we ran for many, many years for the JK. And later in 17, we designed the kit for the 3rd Gen Tacomas. And that used the same lid on the Tacoma kit. So that's the Gen 1. So that was the reason we used that Cole-Hersey isolator is that was really the best device on the market at the time for a simple, easy to install dual battery system. Super reliable, easy to use. Had a little indicator light on top that had a little red light that said when the light was on, the batteries were connected. When the light was off, it let you know the batteries were isolated. Super easy, super heavy duty, super reliable. Served us well for a long time. We've got thousands of those things still out there running today. The Gen 2 kit came in 2018 when we got our JL. So in the JL, it was a little bit more cramped between the fender and the engine. So we didn't have quite as much room that way. So we had to go to a Group 25 size battery, which is a little bit shorter on the long side, but it's a little bit taller. So it has almost exactly the same capacity as the longer Group 34 battery in the JKs. Okay. So since the Group 25s are shorter, are not as long this way, but they're a little bit taller, that meant we had less hood clearance. So the Gen 1 kit with that Cole-Hersey isolator, it would not fit under the hood. So when the hood closed, it was bumping that silver solenoid on top. So Cole-Hersey, or Little Fuse, which is the parent company, they make another version of that device that just separates off the silver solenoid from the control box. So the Gen 2 system has a little blue plastic control box and the silver solenoid mounted separately. And it's designed to fit on top of 2 Group 25 batteries. So the Gen 2, it operated exactly the same. It had the same push button, boost button feature. It had the same bus bars. The functionality was the same. The thresholds where it connects and separates the batteries was all the same. It was just different footprint, different layout, different components to split those apart to reduce the height. That's all. So the ones with the blue controller, that's the Gen 2 kit. So by 2022, we had been doing dual battery kits for almost 10 years, and we've gotten, at that point, we collected a lot of feedback from the customers, saw how they were using it, saw how their use cases were changing over time, and we started to have more customers wanting to use heavier wire on the bus bars. So people were putting more high amperage devices, car stereo equipment, of course, winches, air compressors, auxiliary fuse boxes, more and more and more stuff, right? It seems like the more battery power you get, the more stuff you want to run. So people were loading up those bus bars with more and more devices and kind of maxing them out. So it started to look a little messy on the original bus bars that just had one tall stud for hooking up your heavy gauge cables. And then there was 8 small screws in a circle for your lower gauge wires, your small ring terminals. So we wanted to give people a little bit more flexibility with the size of the wires and the size of the lugs that they could put on there. So the Gen 3 kit improved on everything. Absolutely everything is 100% new. The bus bars are new. Now there's 3 tall studs with different sizes of the studs for different size ring terminals. And there's still a couple of the small small screws for your smaller gauge wires, but we've just seen that people use those less frequently now. We changed the isolator out because newer vehicles are coming out with higher amperage alternators. The original Gen 1 and Gen 2 systems could handle 200 amps maximum flowing through it, which is very impressive and very good. And it could handle spikes of up to 1500 amps for short durations. But the new device is more heavy duty. It'll handle 300 amps continuously flowing through it all the time. So that is a lot of current from a 12 volt system. So that's going to handle, 98% of the scenarios out there, unless you're into big stereo systems and you've got maybe 2 or even 3 alternators on the vehicle or high output alternators. That's going to handle every other scenario. The new isolator also doesn't generate any heat because it doesn't consume any power to keep the batteries connected together. It uses just a few milliamps of power to change the state. So when it's connected, it uses a little power to disconnect the batteries, and that's it. When it's disconnected, it'll consume a little power to flip it to connected. But once it's in that connected or disconnected state, it doesn't consume any power. That means it doesn't generate any heat. The Gen 1 and Gen 2 kits with the silver solenoid, that was an electromagnet inside of there. So it energized an electromagnet, which consumed a little bit of electricity while the engine's running or while the batteries were connected, to energize that electromagnet to keep the contacts closed. The new system doesn't do that. It doesn't consume any power to keep the batteries connected. We also switched to the new boost feature that we talked about with the automatic, the on and the off modes. Whereas the Gen 1 and Gen 2 kits had a momentary push button. So when the batteries were isolated, you could push that button in one time, you'd hear the solenoid click, and it would link the batteries together. But once they're connected together, there wasn't any way to manually separate them. So pushing the button, if the batteries are already connected and you push the button, just be like, what's happening? There's nothing happening. You don't get any feedback, right? So that's the main differences. Obviously, the new cover over all the components is new on the Gen 3. So the Gen 3 is the first time we did that plastic cover to hide all the wiring. It just looks a lot cleaner, and a lot of people have liked that. So yeah, that's the main features. But the overall functionality, the overall purpose, the overall goal of our system is to protect your cranking battery from getting drained down by your aftermarket accessories.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we've been out at, various shows, and I've talked to several of our customers about, they either ran the Gen 1 or Gen 2. They switched to the Gen 3, and they were like, it's night and day difference in terms of organization and look of cleanliness under my hood.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, in the early days, I left all the components exposed and open so that, the concept of dual batteries was nothing new, right? But the way we were doing it was new, with a completely pre-wired integrated package that just drops right in and the wires line right up with the battery post.
Right.
That package was new. So I wanted to leave it all exposed so people could see what we were doing and see how this system was wired up and how we were making this complicated install as simple as possible. So that kind of helped us to explain the system. But over the course of time, it just kind of, I feel like dual batteries just kind of became more mainstream. They became more of a household term. It became more normal. It became more standard and typical to run dual batteries when you're doing a bunch of accessories. So with the Gen 3 system, I said, you know what, why don't we just hide all that? You don't really care how your iPhone works. You don't care what the GPS sensor and the altimeter and all the sensors that they got into your iPhone. So we did the same thing with the Gen 3 system with the cover that just hides all the guts of it. Nobody cares what's inside of there. They just want it to work. And that's what it does.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're not intentionally trying to hide, there's no secrets under there.
There's no secrets under there. There's no user serviceable parts under there. So yeah, there's no reason to take the cover off the Gen 3 system. There's nothing hidden under there that you're going to need. So yeah, just leave that hidden. Just like you don't take your iPhone apart to want to see, what does the Wi-Fi, chip look like? Nobody cares, Oh,
that's good. All right. Well, speaking of, the Gen 2 system, this guy commented on one of our last videos. He said, my little battery link button hasn't worked since my kit was 3 months old. What usually causes that? He's running a 21 Rubicon, and he put the kit in 21, which tells us that it was a Gen 2.
That's a Gen 2 system.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that sometimes that comes down to a misunderstanding of how the kit works. If you're having trouble with our system or you think you're having any problems, please call us, email us, let us help you get that thing running. We want your system to be 100% rock solid, reliable. If it's anything less than that, we want to know about it, okay? But it usually comes down to just a misunderstanding of how the system works. If the like I said earlier, if the batteries were already linked together and he goes to hit his button, he's not going to get anything. He's not going to get a click. He's not going to get an indicator. The Gen 2 system actually doesn't have a little visual indicator. It doesn't have a LED status light, so it's unfortunately it's hard to tell if the batteries are connected or disconnected, unless you have the G screen inside. So it might be just a misunderstanding of how the system works, in that he pushes the button and nothing happens. Now, the way that you would test that is with a voltmeter or the G screen. If the G screen says boost off, and then you push the button and nothing happens, that would be a problem. Okay. So if the batteries are in good health, meaning they're both above at least 10.5 volts, if they're above about 10.5 volts and you push the button, it should link them together and you should hear a noticeable click sound from that solenoid. If you don't get that, please call us, because there's a few simple tests that we can do. There's a few checks we can do. It usually comes down to something simple, like your battery post clamps are loose, or there's a loose cable somewhere, something like that. But that system is super, super reliable. So just call us and we'll help you get it back up and running. But I just want to stress that, again, that we take our products very seriously. So if you have any trouble or misunderstanding about how your system's working, you think your batteries are not charging, you got to let us know. Don't wait 4 years and leave a comment on our YouTube channel. Okay. We want you to be able to get the benefit of our system and know that it's working for you. Okay. So give us a call.
That's right. Or leave the comment, but also call us. Maybe shorter than 4 years.
Yeah. Don't go 4 years with your system wondering if your system is working or not.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all the questions I had from the customers, but I do have a question. I walked out there earlier and the JL is torn to pieces. We leave for Overland Expo in a week. So
yeah, there's nothing more fun than completely stripping your entire Jeep down a week before a show, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's pretty typical around here. For some reason, we never have time to work on our own vehicles until the last minute. But we're putting in a Rockford Fosgate sound system in the JL. The Stage 5 Rockford Fosgate audio system is going into the JL, and we're going to be shooting a video on how to hook up your aftermarket stereo systems to the dual battery system. But yeah, we got that system. We teamed up with Rockford Fosgate down at Jeep Beach earlier this year. We were talking to them at the show, and I was explaining to them at their booth that we were trying to get in front of the car audio crowd a little bit more, get a little bit more in front of those people and explain to them about our dual battery system. We're eyeballs deep in the overlanding world and the rock crawling world. Those guys have known about us for a long time. But I get the sense from the car audio crowd that maybe they don't know, we're not as well known in that circle. So I was telling that to the Rockford Fosgate guys, and they said kind of the same thing. They're like, we're known in the car audio world, but the Jeep guys don't know that we've got this new, factory fit and finish, easy to install. Well, maybe not easy to install, but they've got this complete package just for the Jeep. Most of the stuff from Rockford Fosgate, they sell speakers and amplifiers and stereos and stuff like that, right? But they have a kit that is designed specifically for the JL and the Gladiator that replaces the factory subwoofer and gives you a second subwoofer in the back. And it's got all new trim and all new carpet panels, and it blends right in and it looks all factory. Nice. So I'm really excited about that, because I've been wanting to do a stereo upgrade on mine, but I'm just not the type of guy that wants the great big speaker box that takes up the whole cargo area. So they've got a beautiful system that just looks all factory, and if you don't know what you're looking at, you probably wouldn't even notice it. And it also replaces the sound bar overhead and the tweeters up by the windshield. So we're getting that installed in order to show folks how to install their audio equipment onto our dual battery kit.
So that looks like a big project with the way that the JL looks right now.
Yeah, it's all stripped down. They start off the installation video with, this is a level 5 out of 5 difficulty, but it's basically just because of all the interior trim panels that have to come off. It's basically just a bunch of screws and panel clips. So in my opinion, I think if you can use a screwdriver and if you can follow instructions, you can install that kit. But yeah, it's the whole dash is torn apart. But we'll get it back together in time for the show.
Cool. Well, it sounds like it's going to be a great show. I was looking through the vendor list. It looks like, there's a lot of people that are going to be there.
Yeah. The Overland Expo shows are some of our favorite shows to go to every year. You went to Overland Expo West last year with us.
Right. So how different is it going to be? Because I've never been to East. So how different from West to East?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. West is the biggest show.
Right.
So it's very spread out across the fairgrounds there in Arizona. So it's very spread out, and there's lots of sections here and there, and it's actually easy to kind of miss some of it because it's so big.
Right.
So the Overland Expo East show is it's like a horse racing track in Virginia, and the show is inside of the racetrack, and then the food vendors are right on the outside edge of the racetrack. They also have spectator camping inside the racetrack, so it's a really cool venue. But it's much easier to navigate and get around, and so that you're going to see everything because it's all kind of inside of the center of that racetrack.
So if y'all are going to be there, definitely come by our booth. We are going to have a couple of our new products there sitting on the table to get your hands and eyes on.
Yeah, we got the Grenadier kit is going to be there, along with some other new stuff that we're going to be talking about there at the show.
That's right. We're not going to say anything quite yet.
Yeah, so we're going to be set up right next to the 23-0 booth. So come check us out. What's our booth number?
I think it's A425, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so we'll be at booth A425. We'll be right next to 23-0. So look for all their pop-up rooftop tents. They always have a nice big booth there to show off their tents. So we'll be right there next to them.
That's right. All right. Well, that's all I have for today.
All right. Thanks, Brad. If this video helped you guys out, if you learned something, please share the show with a friend. Let them see this. We don't run any kind of sponsor ads or anything like that on this podcast. We do this to help you guys out. So if you learned something, share the show with a friend. Thanks for watching.